The dust settled on Main Street as Eleanor Hayes rode into Redemption Ridge like a storm given human form. Her hair, dark as midnight and just as untamed, whipped behind her as she brought her stallion to a halt outside the general store. The townspeople stopped mid-stride, their whispers already beginning to spread like wildfire. She wore trousers when respectable women wore skirts, rode astride instead of side saddle, and carried a rifle across her back. With the ease of someone who knew exactly how to use it, Eleanor didn't just break conventions. She shattered them into dust and watched them scatter in the wind. She'd come west after her father's death, refusing to marry the banker her mother had chosen, refusing to become another caged bird in a gilded parlor. Instead, she'd claimed her inheritance, a struggling ranch on the edge of the territory, and set out to prove that a woman could tame this wild land just as well as any man. The warnings came almost immediately. At the feed store, old Mr. Peterson clicked his tongue disapprovingly. Too wild, that one, he muttered to anyone who'd listen. No respect for how things are done. She'll come to ruin. At the church social, the ladies pursed their lips and pulled their daughters away, as if Eleanor's independence might be contagious. No man will have her, they said with certainty. She's too headstrong, too defiant, too wild. Even the ranch hands she tried to hire turned her down flat, unwilling to take orders from a woman, especially one who could outride and outshoot most of them. Eleanor faced it all with her chin held high and fire in her eyes. She worked her ranch alone, breaking horses that others said were unbreakable, mending fences in the scorching sun, and refusing every pitying offer to buy her out. She knew what they said about her. She wore their disapproval like armor. That's when Jake Colton noticed her. He was everything this rough territory demanded, tall and weathered, with hands scarred from hard work and eyes that had seen both the beauty and brutality of frontier life. He'd built his ranch from nothing, earning respect through sheer determination and unwavering integrity. When he first saw Eleanor in town, arguing with a supplier who'd tried to cheat her, something in his chest tightened. She stood there, fierce and unafraid, demanding fairness in a world that rarely gave it. He watched from a distance, as she won that argument through sheer force of will and intelligence, and he found himself smiling. Over the following weeks, Jake made it his business to learn more about her. He heard all the warnings, all the dire predictions about her future. His own ranch foreman shook his head when Jake mentioned her name. She's trouble, boss. Too wild for any sensible man. Doesn't know her place. His friends at the saloon laughed when they caught him watching her ride past. You're barking up the wrong tree, Colton, they said. That woman will never settle down. She'll fight you every step of the way. Jake just smiled. That slow, knowing smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He tipped his hat back and took a long drink before responding. Good, he said simply, the word carrying more weight than a full speech. She's mine. The room went quiet, men looking at each other in confusion. They didn't understand, and Jake didn't care to explain. He'd spent his whole life in a world that tried to break everything beautiful and wild, that tried to cage and tame and diminish. He'd be damned if he'd do the same to the most magnificent woman he'd ever met. The next morning, Jake Colton rode out to the Hayes Ranch, ready to meet his match. Eleanor saw him coming from a mile away, dust rising behind his horse as he approached her property. She straightened from the fence post she'd been setting, wiping sweat from her brow and instinctively checking that her rifle was within reach. Strange men riding onto her land rarely meant anything good. But Jake Colton didn't come with demands or warnings. He simply dismounted, respectfully distant, and asked if she needed help with the fence line. Eleanor's eyes narrowed with suspicion. I don't need charity, Mr. Colton, she said, her voice sharp as a blade, and I certainly don't need a man thinking he can swoop in and rescue the poor, helpless woman. Jake's lips twitched with amusement. Ma'am, if you were helpless, I wouldn't be here. I came because you're doing alone what takes most ranchers a crew of men, and I figured you could use an extra pair of hands. Not rescue, something in his tone, the absence of condescension, the genuine respect made Eleanor pause. Against her better judgment, she nodded. They worked side by side that day, and Eleanor found herself surprised by this quiet man who matched her pace without complaint, who asked her opinion on the work instead of assuming he knew better, who treated her like an equal partner rather than a problem to be solved. As weeks passed, Jake kept coming back, sometimes with help, sometimes with supplies from town, always with that steady, patient presence that both unsettled and comforted her. He never once suggested she should be different, softer, more conventional. When the town gossips clucked their tongues about her wearing trousers, Jake said he admired practicality. When they criticized her shooting competitions with the ranch hands, Jake challenged her to a match and grinned when she won. When they said no decent woman would run a business like a man, Jake asked her advice on his own cattle operation. The turning point came during a violent summer storm. Eleanor's small herd had broken through a weak section of fence and scattered into the hills. She was out alone, trying desperately to round them up before they were lost to rustlers or predators, when Jake appeared through the rain. He'd seen the storm coming and known she'd need help. Together they worked through the night, lightning cracking overhead, rain turning the ground to mud beneath their horses' hooves. They drove the cattle back as the storm finally broke, both exhausted, soaked to the bone, and exhilarated by the shared triumph. Standing in her barn afterward, watching the dawn break golden over the hills, Eleanor finally understood. This man didn't want to tame her. He wanted to ride beside her through every storm. "They say I'm too wild," she said quietly, not looking at him. "I've heard," Jake replied, moving closer. "They say no man in his right mind would choose a woman like me." She finally turned to meet his eyes, finding them full of warmth and something deeper, something that made her heart race. Jake reached up slowly, giving her every chance to step away, and tucked a mud-streaked strand of hair behind her ear. "Eleanor Hayes," he said, his voice low and certain. "I don't want a woman who needs taming. I want a partner who'll stand with me when the storms come. I want someone who knows her own mind and isn't afraid to speak it. I want you exactly as you are, wild heart and all." He paused, that smile playing at his lips again. "If you'll have me." Eleanor felt something crack open in her chest. All the walls she'd built to protect herself from a world that wanted to change her. Here was a man who saw her completely and chose her anyway, not despite her wildness, but because of it. "They'll talk," she warned, but she was smiling now too. "Let them," Jake said, and he kissed her as the sun rose over their shared horizon, two wild hearts finding home in each other. 6 months later, Eleanor Hayes became Eleanor Colton in a ceremony that scandalized the entire town. She wore trousers under her wedding dress and kept her rifle propped against the church pew. Jake wouldn't have had it any other way. They built an empire together. 2 ranches merged into one, legendary spread where wild horses ran free, and a woman's voice carried equal weight in every decision. When their daughter was born, they named her Liberty, and she grew up watching her mother ride like the wind while her father cheered her on. The townspeople eventually stopped talking, realizing that some love stories aren't meant to be tamed, they're meant to inspire. Subscribe now and never miss stories that celebrate the wild, the brave, and the beautifully untamed.